Hello! So if you watched this video, you'll know that one of my goals for 2025 is to try my hand at book binding, or rebinding, as the case may be. And I have tackled pretty much every other project possible in an effort to not tackle this one. There's nothing else to say. I'm scared. I tend to be a very,
well, it's close enough
kind of person. And there's not much room for error when it comes to measurements for books. But today we are facing our fears. We're finally pulling out the binding supplies that have been sitting under my bed for about a month now. And we're gonna rebind this book. Cast your votes below on whether or not you think this is actually going to turn out okay. Honestly, at this point, I'm just shooting for still readable and not having to buy another one.
We shall see.
So without further ado, let's start ripping this thing apart. First of all, if you're absolutely cringing watching me rip this cover off, please understand that I was cringing the whole time too. This goes against all the rules of book respect, and I think I felt a little piece of my soul rip away in the process. And I really didn't think I could feel any worse. But as life always does when you feel that way, it shows you that you, in fact, can. So I bought these supplies at the end of January, and when they arrived, I did glance over the items just to make sure that they were all there and shipshape, or shipshape without actually opening them, 'cause that wouldn't come back to bite me. So like I said earlier, I was freaking out about this project and kept putting it off. So once I did finally open everything up, I was already many weeks past the return date.
Freaking foreshadowing.
So I ripped the cover off, got my glue out to reattach the page I'd accidentally torn off in the process, and well folks, we have already hit a little bit of a snag here. I'm pretty sure my glue is not supposed to look like cottage cheese. So that's a problem. Stay tuned.
One eternity later.
So the new unchunky glue arrived, and we could finally begin the book rebinding process. Step number 1, the end papers. This was arguably one of the most fun parts for me because I got to search through all of the many scrapbook papers I've been hoarding over the years. So I wanted the end papers to fit the vibe of the book. We'll talk more about the book itself later, but for context, it's kind of like Harry Potter meets Wednesday Addams with, I don't know, maybe a little bit of Alice in Wonderland thrown in. So after flipping through the many options, I narrowed it down to this black gothic floral design and then this black, pink, and gold floral. In the end, I thought that the plain black suited the book better, so we got to work folding and measuring. I folded them the wrong way first. Classic Allie.
We'd expect nothing less.
But if you want to actually see the end papers, they have to be folded inside out. Now, unfortunately, I was a little bit off with the cutting part. For one, this book has been very well loved, and the pages are a tad uneven anyways, which kind of threw off the size of the end paper, which we'll see later. But I also had a glitch with my rotary cutter, and one of the edges came out a little bit jagged, so I only had 2 sheets of this paper though, so I either had to pick a different paper and try again, or stick with the wonky edges. In the end, we went with the wonky. So after marking my papers so I wouldn't glue the book upside down later on, we got to gluing the papers themselves. Look at that nice smooth glue.
Like butter, not like ricotta cheese.
By the way, this is the video tutorial I followed for this project, so if you want to learn how to rebind a book from someone who isn't doing it for the first time, go watch her video. She's actually good at this and knows what she's doing. Step number 2, the spine gizzards. All the little bits that go on the inside of the spine to make sure your book doesn't just fall apart. And also the headbands. Those aren't gizzards though, those are just pretty. So my dad helped me MacGyver this makeshift book press, and by help, I mean he did all of it. And I was given the instructions to have someone hold the other side down while I got one clamp on so it wouldn't like seesaw and smack me in the head with the solid wooden board.
Ouch!
But I forgot this vital piece of information and decided to work on this part while no one else was home besides Annie Jane, and her lack of opposable thumbs rendered her kind of unhelpful for this task. So I had to use a stack of books for leverage instead, which let me tell you was not easy. Moral of that story, use the advice you're given and it'll save you a lot of time and a lot of struggle. Anywho, so I picked out these cute little yellow headbands because I knew I'd be using some yellow later on for the cover painting process. Trying to make this whole thing cohesive and whatnot. Then we glued on the mole, which is that piece of like mesh fabric stuff, and a strip of leftover scrapbook paper. I don't really know what the paper is for. In the tutorial, she was like,
Hey, you can glue down a piece of paper on it too.
and she did, so I was like,
Okay, if you do it, I'ma do it, because one of us knows what we're doing, and it's not me. So,
now y'all know I absolutely love books. Reading is a huge hobby of mine,
nay, it is a necessity of life.
but art books in particular hold a very, very special place in my heart. Every art book on my shelf is this compilation of the love, the passion, and the imagination that my favorite artists have put into their creative practice. Through their books, I see the heart behind their work, the struggle and frustration that goes into it, and the secret thoughts that they so graciously share throughout. I am over the moon to be able to now share my own art book with you guys, The Adventures of Bits and Bubbles. Honestly, I never thought I'd see the day when a book of my own could be added to the art book collection. Full of sketches, lore, poems, and personal thoughts, this book contains all of the heart behind Bits and Bobbles, and I hope it connects with each and every one of you. So if you want to pick up a copy for yourself or a cozy friend, there's a link down in the description. Now back to the book rebinding. Step number 3, building the cover. This was the most brutal part of the process, and I can honestly say I was about 4 seconds away from quitting the project entirely. Not the gluing or measuring or the putting together part. No, that was all actually really fun. No, it was cutting the boards that made me want to cease existing. Never have my hands been so cramped and so sad. Seriously, my wrists and fingers ached for days. Bookboard isn't planks of wood, but it's also not just like cardboard. Like, this stuff is thick to cut through. Thankfully, I didn't cut myself with a box cutter, but we came close a few times. I will say the cork-backed ruler is one of the best investments I made for this project because it grips onto your surface and doesn't like slide around when you cut against it. Low-key, this ruler probably saved my life. I can honestly say the rotary cutter is much more fun to use than the box cutter. Did I take a chunk out of my fingernail with it? Yes, but that was our only personal casualty, so I'm gonna call it a win. I don't know, it's very satisfying to use. I do apologize, I am absolutely losing my voice right now, so bear with me. One issue I ran into with this project was a little bit of wrinkling in the fabric and not getting a perfectly smooth crease around the book spine. This is my first time using a bone folder, and while I'm actually kind of impressed that it went as well as it did, I still have a lot of practicing to do. They're relatively minor wrinkles and such, but still irritatingly noticeable. So after I glued my boards to the fabric, I left it to dry overnight. This glue does dry pretty quickly, but I wanted to make sure that nothing was gonna move around when I glued the text block into the cover. Which is the next step, gluing the book together. I was so scared. Like, this is the make it or break it moment, and I am very, very good at breaking things. I checked multiple times before ever touching glue to the surface that the book was in fact facing the right direction and I wouldn't have to read it upside down. But thankfully this part of the process was very smooth and seamless and ended up looking pretty good. I once again used the MacGyvered book press and left it to dry overnight. Now if I thought that measuring and gluing was going to be the scariest part, I was sorely mistaken. The big nerves appeared when it came time to paint. But let's rewind a little bit. So I spent a lot of time sketching out some potential ideas for the cover and ultimately decided on this one. It's a revamped version of a sketch I did last year and really liked, and I don't know, I thought it would be a very fun, playful cover design. Now because I am absolute trash at lettering, I 100% cheated and designed my spine in Canva. I'm not even a little bit sorry either. I know my limitations. I did design the little crow myself though, and the little border bits at the top, but we'll get to that later. So my plan was to print out the spine design and my sketch, rub graphite on the back of the paper, and then go over the outlines with a pencil to transfer the designs. Now I had no idea if this was going to work or how I was going to transfer my designs if it didn't work. But I tested it out on a little scrap of book fabric, the method worked, and I got to transferring. And this was the other worst part of the process. Once again, my hand was horribly cramped up, pressing with all my might to make sure that the designs did in fact make their way onto the book. A necessary evil, but 10 out of 10, don't recommend. So I decided to paint the spine first because I could use the book press to prop it up at a better angle for me to paint. I didn't want to put the book in the press again after I painted the cover because I wasn't really sure if it was going to chip the paint. Thus, we painted the spine first. So I wanted to use the same method of mixing metallic paints that I used in this video to make like a black metallic paint, but in the end, it just ended up black, no real shimmer there, which is fine, but kind of a waste of time. It also resulted in another casualty. So here I've set my camera up to begin showing the process of mixing the paint. About now, I'm sliding out my box of shimmery pigments from the art cart that my camera is mounted on without looking. Oh, crap. And this is the sound of the glass jar that was apparently sitting on top of that box, hitting the floor and shattering everywhere. So that was fun. You know what else is fun? Not lettering. Lettering is hard, even when you have the outlines. I spent 11 minutes on the N alone. Did I get faster as I went along? Yes, but it was still painstakingly slow. There's a lot of letters in Nevermore. I did surprisingly enjoy painting the little border details at the top, and I think they came out somewhat symmetrical. I've been doing some book spine and cover designy sketches over the last couple months in preparation for this, and I really love like the elegant swirly ones, but I am unequipped to tackle those just yet. I don't know, maybe sometime in the future. I really enjoyed painting the little crow though. At first I'd planned on an umbrella, but since I included that in the cover design, I opted for a crow instead. Maybe I'll do the same crow design on each of the spines of the books in this series, so like they're an obvious set. I don't know, we'll see. Now y'all know I love gouache. It is my absolute favorite medium. But sadly, I could not use plain old gouache for this project. Regular gouache reactivates with moisture, and inevitably our hands get sweaty sometimes. I didn't want to be reading this book only to discover that I'd smudged hours worth of work. So gouache wasn't an option. Or was it? Behold, Liquitex acrylic gouache, regular gouache's non-reactivating cousin. Now, I know I've mentioned in the past that I don't love acrylics and I hate painting on canvas, so I really was not sure how this was gonna go. Would I be able to use the paint mostly like regular gouache? Would the book fabric feel too much like canvas? Would I absolutely butcher the cover and not be able to fix my mistakes because the gouache won't reactivate? A lot of questions, and I had no answers. So after spiraling like a honey-baked ham for a little while, I came to the conclusion that I would never know unless I tried. So we jumped in and started painting. There was definitely a learning curve because of the paint itself and the surface material. Because it's fabric, the paint spreads differently, especially when using a thinner mixture. To get a really crisp edge, you have to use pretty thick paint. But you can use thinner mixtures to get some really fun effects. It was interesting using thinner mixtures for like the parts of her skin that are in shadow because the blue of the fabric impacted the value and color of those shadows and made them feel like more a part of the book, if that makes sense. I will say I think the non-reactivating quality of the paint actually worked to my advantage in this project. I really had to focus in and just not be too nitpicky. I had to confidently mix up large amounts of paint and get them done quickly because I couldn't just use water to reactivate a previous mixture if I needed more of that color. The pressure helped me work much more quickly and confidently. So let's chat a little bit about the book. Why did I choose this one? Why is it my favorite? And how did I come up with the cover design? So Nevermore is the first book of the Morgan Crow series by Jessica Townsend. I first read this book back in 2021, I believe. I don't know, that sounds right. I'm not at all ashamed to say that I love middle grade fantasy fiction. It is a big source of inspiration for me. So I'd seen this one on the shelf at my library a few times and finally picked it up for a try. I was absolutely hooked from the prologue. So Morgan Crow was born on Eventide, which means she's cursed, and she in turn curses everything around her. A word of encouragement from her brings destruction to the receiver, and her very presence causes all sorts of chaos and shenanigans. But the worst part is that she and all the other Eventide children are cursed to die on the next Eventide night. Kind of a bummer for an 11-year-old. But when Eventide arrives, so too does a very eccentric, exuberant redhead named Jupiter. By spiriting her away to Nevermore on that day, he helps her cheat death. Jupiter enters her into the trials of Nevermore's most prestigious community, the Wondrous Society. Throughout the book, she journeys through the trials, finds a home and family at the hotel that Jupiter owns, and discovers some very wonderful, whimsical things about the nature of her curse. It is such an incredible book, and one I've reread countless times. Found family tropes are a big favorite of mine, and this book is the perfect version of it. And even though it's a middle grade book, it's written in a way that it can easily be enjoyed by any age. It can be very difficult finding children's books that don't feel childish. Like books that speak to a childlike heart and imagination, but don't bore an adult mind, if that makes sense. So this series is my absolute favorite, and I've been very impatiently waiting for the fourth book for like 3 years now. It's finally coming out this summer, so I will be dropping absolutely everything to binge read it the moment I can get my hands on it. Anywho, so I bought my copy secondhand from Abe Books, and it was already in a little bit of a rough shape. The cover was slightly torn and had a bunch of markings on it, so I thought this would be the perfect book to try my hand at rebinding. I really couldn't make it any worse than it already was, and if it turned out like garbage, I could always just buy another copy. I also have the next 2 books in the series, but one of them is already a really nice hardcover, so my plan is to donate that one to my library and buy a used paperback for myself.
No sense in destroying an already nice book, right?
So what is the significance of the cover design? This scene is fairly early on in the book, so I don't feel like it's a massive spoiler or anything. On the eventide that Jupiter rescues Morgan, they return to his hotel in time for the Morningtide celebrations. And on Morningtide, everyone opens their umbrellas, or brollies as they're also known, and jump from the rooftop, signifying stepping boldly into the new age. I've always really loved this scene and the whimsy behind it, and I don't know, it just seemed like the perfect thing to illustrate. My own little act of stepping boldly into a new project that I've never tried before and hoping for the best. So what do we love and what went wrong? Most obvious to me is Morgan's foot on the left. I had an issue with the transfer where I accidentally made the foot larger than it was supposed to be and didn't realize it until after I'd started painting. So it's massive and a little wonky, and we had to make the other boot massive to match, and I don't know. That's the thing about this kind of project, there really are no redos unless you're gonna rip off the fabric and recover it. You just gotta find a way to be comfortable living with your mistakes. And same with the lettering. I had a few moments where my hand twitched and a nice clean line became a wobbled line. But once it's on, it's on. The O's were a bit of a sad point for me too. I struggle so much with O's, and unfortunately this title had 2 of them. Like I mentioned earlier, the end pages weren't quite the right size due to my poor measuring skills, and folding the paper also tore it a tad in the middle, and like the white of the inside showed through. I think this is probably because I used a thicker scrapbook paper rather than more of like a copy paper thickness. Something to consider for future book rebinds. Now I was super proud of my cover corners. So I did the little diagonal cut and folding technique she showed in the video, and they turned out so good, except for one. I overcut the fabric on one corner and it didn't quite overlap, so we can see a little smidgen of the bookboard on the inside. I put that one in the back for a reason. Overall, I really love this rebind. I think the cover itself turned out pretty good. I really love the designs I painted, and it's really cool knowing that I have a one-of-a-kind edition. Now you might be thinking,
Oh, typical Allie painting the little dotty spotty bits.
ha! They are in fact book canon and are not dotty spotty bits at all. They just look like them. I won't explain further because that is kind of a spoiler, but if you know, you know. So this is it. This was my first attempt at a book rebind, and I gotta say, I'm really proud of how this turned out. Are there some bumps and bruises and boo-boos? Yes. I don't think any of us who've been around this channel for any length of time were expecting anything less. It definitely started off as a series of unfortunate events, but gradually it turned into a project that was actually very fun and borderline kind of soothing. The only part I kind of hated was the bookboard cutting, but it's a necessary evil. So let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed this project too. I would love to do some more of these in the future and share that journey with you guys if you're interested. Anywho, thank you guys so much for watching, and huge thank you to the Cozy and Curious Creatives over on Patreon for helping to support my art journey. If you're interested in another bookish video, then head on over to watch this video next. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye guys!